Alright, one more video between watching Wrong Turn 2 and watching Wrong Turn 3. I mean, I'm sure by the time you see these, then I'll have already finished marathoning those. But I realized that I needed to re-film this video because I just rewatched every single Scream movie and the show again, including watching the fifth movie a fourth time. And then I did a little tier list on the internet of the characters, and I realized that my Ghostface ranking was completely wrong. And I was like, shit, I can't leave that online, I have to change it. And so this is that video, and I'm not going to do the movies and TV shows separate this time, just because that's more work for me. I've already listed them out on this piece of paper, and there's 16 killers in the Scream universe. I think like 2 of them aren't even ghost faces. I mean, you could say the ones that are wearing the other mask might not be ghost faces either. I don't. So there's really the 2 from the Halloween special are the 2 that don't have a mask that is based off of Scream and could be called a ghost-like. So that's why the video's not called Ghost Faces Ranked. There's 9 killers from the movies and 7 killers from the TV show. So whenever this new season of the show comes out, which sadly won't be the fucking Lakewood series, then we might actually have 9 and 9. So that'll be fun. I do think that they should do a crossover with like the characters from the first 2 seasons and the movies and the 3rd season. Bring them all together. Kill Liv from the 3rd season and Audrey from the seasons 1 and 2. But that would be a fun crossover to have, and they could comment on crossovers. What happens when 2 killers are fighting to death on the same block and trying to take each other's kills, like how they play with their prey. I don't know. That would be a great movie or show. Before we get into this, I want to say if you watch the other one, don't expect the list to be similar. Like if there was only like a couple that I moved around, I wouldn't have bothered doing this. I might have done like a short one where I said, oh, this person's... But the show killers specifically, and some of the movie killers even, shifted quite a bit at the end of... I had quite a few surprises, but number 16 was no surprise to me, and Whitton. If you don't know who that is, good on you. Yeah, Reginald Whitton is a character from the backstory of the Halloween special. He's one of the 2 that's definitely not a ghost face. He kills 2 people, one of which is a child, one of which is a woman that was trying to save her daughter from him. He also kills that daughter, but she kills him, and he dies before her. God, yeah, he's a nothing character, a sleazebag. I really hate him. He's the only character on this list I hate. It was pretty indisputable he would be last, and it was the only one that was indisputable. And this being the only killer that I hate, there aren't even killers that I dislike. So, like, the gap between 16th and 15th is pretty big. A real fucking piece of shit. He's a rich asshole on an island taking advantage of his caretakers that couldn't make ends meet to say no and leave. And then he tries to go for the daughter too. Like, once she's hit a certain age, having watched her grow up. He's a sick fuck, and he really deserved to die. And I'm glad that he did. I mean, fuck, none of these killers are alive. That's one of the beauties of Scream. It's kind of a blessing and a curse. Because there's certainly 3 or 4 that you'd have said that if they'd made it, it would have helped the franchise, or even that movie alone. Yeah. Reginald's one of the only ones where, like, every time you hear about him, you're just like, I'm glad he's fucking dead. In the same vein of, like, background story killers, 15 is Brandon James. A few, like, mutated killers that has tragic nature to him, where like he wasn't a killer at first, it was just that he snapped and killed a bunch of people all at once because of society fucking with him so much and the bullies beating the shit out of him, I'm sure that, like, probably the first kill might have been self-defense, and then after that, that bloodlust took over. But Brandon James is really a background killer. He's 2 kills on screen that aren't that good, and the rest is off screen, and really he exists so that there's a tragic backstory to the Lakewood story, much like Maureen being a tragic backstory to the movies. Like the dynamics between Brandon James and like the what he causes in like Kevin and Miguel and Maggie. I really like the way he fits in the story, but he is this low because we don't get a lot of time with him. He's kind of a ripoff of a better killers, and he's just not. There's not a lot to go on with this, you know. Here on, these are all spoilers for every installment of Scream, and from here on is all ghost faces except one killer that is not a ghost face. This is the start of where the list originally and now divulge. Because these bottom 2 are the same bottom 2, even though I didn't even include Whitton last time. Just to show his impact on me until I rewatched it recently. But, yeah. Is Piper Shaw from season 1. And I love all of the killers from here on out, so the rankings, Piper, so you'll know that, like, even the worst ghost faces are great. Loving them doesn't necessarily mean they're great, but they're the best. Love Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation, but and none of these killers are as bad as the worst parts of that movie. Sorry, I'm in the middle of a hickathon. Like, I watched all the Hills Have Eyes and some of the Wrong Turns, and then I'm going to watch all the Texases too after I finish the Wrong Turns. So that's why that popped in my head. But Piper, much like Mrs. Loomis in that she's the media, and her blood identity is hidden and part of her motive, and that she's constantly in contact with one of the final girls. Really good job of blending in, and she seems like a genuine friend. She even helps them figure out Kieran's the killer, although after she helps hint at that, they completely throw them off, and me off, the first time I watched it. So that really didn't go anywhere, but then, like, what drags her this low is her post-reveal attitude is the most over-the-top, in a bad way, of any of the ghost faces. It just doesn't feel as real. Like, for most of these ghost faces and killers, I can draw on a psychology basis for them. But with Piper, it seems just kind of whack, like all mixed together with some different shit, and she's like really nuts. And yeah. She has some good kills, but for the first 2 seasons, we don't, like, who killed who could be debatable. I think the only people in the first season that Kieran killed was Rachel and Will, and I think Will, both of them had to have a hand in tying him to that chair. And he might have also killed Riley. But Piper, like, I don't know, the brutalness of, like, her, like, being a shoulder to cry on for Emma and always being there to talk to as, like, just someone that she can confide in that's not a main part of her circle that's so infused with the drama that she couldn't talk to them. Having that be the killer is a really intense, fun subversion that's, I don't know, I really like that. Those are pretty fucking good. Like, Will's death with the thing that saws him in half, that was obviously both killers, and I think that Kieran was the one that said we should kill Will now because she's starting to go back for him, and we need her to be with me for this plan to work. And I love that. So give that kill in part to her, because there's no way either of them alone, maybe Kieran alone could have done it, but I don't think Piper alone could have gotten him in that chair. I don't know. Love Piper's how giddy she is that Emma's high school experience was ruined by her first time getting posted. When she's like, she seems a little too into that, to be fair. But I think it's hilarious and just dark as fuck that like Piper and Kieran, the killers of the first two seasons, they want to emotionally fuck with the main characters almost as much as they want to kill them, which I think wasn't an aspect of the fucking movies, and I think it's a really good aspect here, and it helps explain why this slasher formula is drawn out to series. Piper's really fun. The way Piper like weasels her way into the group, but like remains a side character. Like Will confides in her, and then I also just love that her being with Will when he's attacked draws suspicion away from her and makes her twist work, but it also adds an extra element to the finale that isn't in the finale scenes of the movies, where we still don't know who the other killer is. The way the third act pans out, where her extending what happens and getting killed might be the most realistic version of that, because it's so in character that she wants this moment to be savored, balanced by the craziness part of it. We have Beth. I think the only killer that we don't get a last name for, and it's fitting because she's the only character that we don't get any basis for like a psychological anything. She's the most unrealistic killer. Now, I had a huge crush on Beth every time I watched the series, and I think that her being the Randy of the show is very fitting that she's the killer, because it just isn't expected and really fun. It's not the first time they did it, but there was so many Randys in the fourth movie that like it had like a different impact than the main person that is the Randy of the series being the killer, because I didn't really expect her. I think that she's really fun in the first 5 episodes, and then when she's revealed as the killer, she's not as fun. Like, I mean, her acting is still awesome, but like the writing just doesn't give her anything as far as like a good reason or like any basis of anything. I mean, she's just like always thought of like wanting to be a slasher icon in real life, but was just waiting for someone to have a good motive for her to latch onto, and then she does the killing spree with them and then betrays them and then tries to finish up the job alone. I don't know, and their whole like romance with Amir, like he's so far out of her league that it doesn't make sense to me. He bogs Beth down, and even Piper, is that they're the hardest ones for me to think of a psychology like diagnosis for. Like Beth just says, "Oh, I was born a sociopath and I've always been fucked up and just waiting for a reason to kill." And there's several killers in the franchise that kind of fall in the category of we don't have a real clear motive on why they became a serial killer, and it heightens them. But with those characters, they're portrayed realistically to where they're just not giving you that information, or bits of it are only given in like snippets. With Beth, they literally just try to just sell us that she was a bad seed from birth, and that's just not how that works. As far as like when she's not the like killer, like before she's revealed, and like her kills themselves do bump her above Piper, even though there's a little bit more to go on for psychology with her. But and also just Ghostface from one of the movies, and it's actually Mrs. Loomis. Mrs. Loomis is amazing. Like every scene that she's in, you can tell that like her thought process once you know what's happening. Like her first time you see her, she's just walking by the camera while Gail's walking this way, and she's like, And then the next time we see her, she runs up and she's just like, "Hi, Gale," and I love that. And like just the her dynamic with Gale of like badgering her and fucking with her emotionally and doing it in a way that makes sense as a media person. It's a great element of the sequel that like heightens it, that like we're flipping it where Gale was doing that with everyone in the first movie, and now Mrs. Loomis is giving her a taste of what that's like and fucking with her before she kills her, which I love. The thing that really drags Mrs. Loomis down is that I think she's the only one that had no part whatsoever in planning the murders as far as the MO. Obviously, she planned the murders of Sydney, Randy, Dewey, and Gale, and she set Mickey up at that college specifically to kill them. I think Mickey, being the film student and the just the type of character he is, where he wants killed, he's obviously the one that's making it to where they're trying to one up the original, and they're trying to get more kills and fucking make it more brutal. Whereas I think Mrs. Loomis would have been fine just killing the 4 people she's there to kill, and that's why you couldn't have done this movie with just her. It's Randy, and in my opinion, she kills Cece because Mickey was still at the party, and Mrs. Loomis was the first on the scene of those characters. Might have also helped stab Marine, but she just has such a low kill count and has such little to do with the Ghostface plans. It's like the first 3 kills are people that Mickey picked out, and then she snaps on Randy, and of course Randy being an off-screen kill that's lessened by that beatbox scene, that's a character that we love who doesn't get the death he deserves, and it being her only kill besides 2 that other people would argue she had nothing to do with, it all kind of works against her. Like, yeah, her attack on Dewey is great and would have been like the best kill of the franchise if he'd have actually died then, but like he didn't die, and it just makes her kind of a failure because she kills only Randy, and Sydney, Gale, and Dewey were also on her list, and I think that if she at least got Gale or Dewey, I'd give her a little bit more credit. She is a loving homage to Mrs. Voorhees, who I think is like one of my favorite slasher killers ever. So, in comparison to her and even her counterpart in the movie, and just 11 more Ghostfaces. I'm sorry, but that's where that goes. Love, and 15 through 13 I like. So, please don't hate on me, Laurie Metcalf. But, might be a controversial pick. You'll notice that the Ghostface ranking from before I rewatched 1 through season 3 was different. And we're still different. Number 11, Jill Roberts. She only has the weaker kills. I mean, Trevor and Charlie's kills were good. And those are the ones that the actress actually does, which is good. But the other kills she gets are just the cops and her mother. But I don't think that makes any sense. He was with Robbie from the Stabathon to Kirby's house. Jill texted Kirby to pick her up, and then killed the cops, and then killed her mother, and then Kirby picked her up. I think that just makes way more sense than Charlie doing it, because he killed the first 4 people, and I don't want to take too much credit from Jill. I've always thought she killed those people, so she was already there. Is by far the least realistic person getting stabbed in the head in that franchise. I mean, the temple, you can stab. The base of the skull, you can stab. He gets stabbed in the fucking forehead, though, and that's stupid. His last line's funny, though. I've always loved Anthony Anderson. But Jill, I think one of my favorite aspects of Jill is that she spent years picking her friends to be like the characters in the first movie. And her eye was really good for that, because she saw that Charlie is a lot like Stu. And I don't know, the whole way she framed this and the planning. I know she did most of the planning. Well, Charlie probably did equal parts planning. He seems like more of a fan than she is. But I don't know. I love the whole idea that them growing up in the town that the stab took place, and growing up on those movies, like getting desensitized to something that was happened. I think it plays into their derealization really well, or like why they wound up that way. I don't know. I really love Pretty Low. God, I don't know. I don't like that she kills her mom. Her motive is really selfish and whiny. I love her performance though. Like when she shoots Judy, it's like, don't fucking tell me what to do. Like I felt that. Like I love that. But yeah, I don't know. She really biffs it towards the end. I mean, she has a gun. She has all the main characters in a room. We've already gone over. I wanted Dewey and or Gale to die in 3 and 4, and 5. The fact that she had the gun, and she could have done it. They could have done it, and they didn't. It's just and I basically blame Jill for that. I mean, Charlie tried to stab her, but I think the goal was for her to live through that. Otherwise, he would have not stabbed her on the shoulder. But yeah, I just think that she's but after the reveal, she's great. But I don't know. I love the twist because no one was expecting the new blood final girl to be the killer. I did watch one reaction where they can. One of the big shocks for me, I would say that there's 4 of the placements that shocked me. But they're accurate, so number 10 is Tom, played by Alex Calvert of Supernatural fame. Much like his seasons of Supernatural, he's great in it, but it's the worst of the IP. Job of playing the killer. Even before he's the killer, he does a good job of like on rewatch, it not only does it make sense he's the killer, but it also makes sense that they don't think he's the killer. And I don't know. To me that all is a big plus. Not everyone falls into both of those camps. I mean, Jill does, but I'm trying to think. There's other ones too, I'm sure, but God, I don't know. I really like Tom. I think that what lowers him is that he's the only one that's not a ghost face. He's not doing the same MO. He gets very few kills, and literally none of them are characters you give a fuck about. So, but it all makes sense with his MO because he wants to with Emma because he has a tragic backstory that fucked him up, and she has a tragic backstory that fucked her up, and they actually have great chemistry together. And the idea is that he's not going to try and kill any of her friends because, you know, he wants them to come to their family barbecues in a few years or whatever. So he's just killing people that were already on the island that know what Alex Whitton looks like because he's taking that form. He's like, I'm Alex Whitton, even though he's Tom Martin. And I don't know. I thought Alex Calvert did a really good job. I mean, I've only seen him in like 3 things, and he does a great job in all of them, so I like the actor. That's like a middle school Superbad. I don't remember what it's called, but it's pretty funny. The shocker ones for me, which was Roman Bridger from Scream 3. He's a lot lower just because he's so whiny all the time, but it's not as bad as I remembered it when I rewatched it. I disrespect the whole idea of like he's trying to kill his sibling, and of like stabbing them in the back mainly. I don't like that. But, you know, he does a good job of being the Ghostface for the most part. I mean, he snags the most kills up until that point because he doesn't have to share the kill count with anyone. He's a pretty badass in that third act. He's just like lose something. He's like found something. Bang! Yeah, I love that scene. Start it is trying to finish it because it helps with the idea of this being the concluding chapter, and the retcon helps with the idea of it being a satire on the sequel that kills the franchise, which I think it's a closer satire to that than it is to the concluding chapter of a trilogy, which, if you really think about it, aren't completely different. It's kind of inherent. Because if it's... And the Scream 4 is an example of that being true. Just because it's the only time in the movie where he's attacking everyone at once, so it's like it makes up for him always sneaking up on people and stabbing them in the back. But yeah, no, because he like punches Dewey, slashes Dewey, stabs Tyson, and then he chases Tyson, and then the flip totally looks like he broke his neck there, and then throwing him off the balcony. Because the idea that the villains are the producer and the director, it's just really fitting and it makes sense. And how, like, I really don't like how he's always bitching that his movie's getting shut down when it's literally his fault. But at the same time, it would really, if he wasn't upset, it'd been a little more obvious he was the killer if he was just totally fine with his movie getting shut down. So that makes sense. I really don't like the scene where he's in the basement but faking his death, because it just doesn't really make sense. But I do really enjoy Ghostface's attack choreography in this movie. And I enjoy it in all the movies, but it is different per movie because he's playing a different character in each movie. And I think that his like swiftness and evasiveness fits in line with this killer's personality of like he wants to get the job done and receive no harm, and so he does his killings in a very not respectable way, where like it's like I said, he's stabbing people in the back. He only attacks multiple people at once, one time. I mean, I guess twice if you count just hacking Mark while Sydney's there, but the other two were tied up. I don't know. I'm giving him credit because he had a lot of kills, and he's pretty good at playing this character, the actors. I just think that he's not higher because he's a wine bag, but he is this high because he kills a Weinstein. So yeah, I don't know. It all kind of balances out. I don't like the retcon, but like I said earlier, I think that Roman. Actually, I don't know if I think I said this in another video. So Roman, or like formulating this to like match a slasher formula or any of that. I think that he just helped organize one murder, and then he saw the movie or read the book, and then there was a sequel, and he thought, I need to finish what I started and make this the ultimate trilogy. And I think if you were going to do the concluding chapter of a trilogy, that was like the way to do it. I mean, the original script of having Stu do it, it was always supposed to be someone tied to the original murders. And I think that retconning it to where someone helped plan Maureen's murder is a better retcon than resurrecting the dead. So, even though I like Stu more, obviously, I think they went the right route with this movie. Have Jay from season 3 of the TV show. And I've always liked Jay. I think out of all of the killers that are going after their sibling, his motive makes the most sense. He has two. That one dies. The other one takes up his position and pretends to be him, which is vastly, disgustingly disrespectful to not only the dead, but the grieving. And Jay finds out, because then the dad breaks up with that mom, takes his son to his other family because they're all grieving their kid together, and somehow neither of the parents find out that the Marcus has taken Dion's place, going after Dion or Marcus. I guess I'll call him Dion, even though I think that it's very disgusting that he did that. But kills, I think that Beth has better kills, but Jay's kills are fucking great too. I mean, he kills that guy by stabbing him in the neck and putting the plastic bag over his head. That's great. Fucking crushing Candyman. He has a fight with Candyman. I think that all of his scenes before he's revealed as the killer, like, you buy that he would kill somebody, but you don't necessarily attribute that to Ghostface. You attribute that to just the lifestyle that he's living in. And so the reveal totally works. To talk and shit, and like they have this whole like this arc where Dion starts to finally grow closer to his older brother, but then obviously in like one of the last two episodes, uh don't think this means we're even. And he's not even, and Dion's not even in the car at that point, but like I like that little moments that mean more things the second time you watch them. Why he's not higher partially, but like also, like I said, he has the best motive for it, so that's why he's above the other two that do that. Yeah, he wish he had more screen time, but yeah, I don't know. I redid this ranking because if you remember the last ranking, he was a lot higher. But we have Billy Loomis. Now, Billy Loomis is a great killer. Like I said, I love all the killers after Mrs. Loomis, and I would say that from J up are like top tier, if not A tier, psychopath. And like some people like complain that he's so obvious, but in my mind, he's just so good at playing the character that you could tell he was the killer. And that's not a negative in my opinion because he's not the twist. The second killer is a twist. And they play with Billy a lot in this movie. They do the same thing with Richie where like they keep making you double guess on if he's the killer or not, but Richie's the invert of it where his personality screams he's not the killer and Billy's personality screams he is the killer, but they go back and forth probably the same amount of times, I would imagine. The thing that drags him down a little bit is that he doesn't have very many kills because they only kill like five people between them, six I think if you count Maureen. And I think that obviously they both killed Maureen. Billy's the one that stabs Casey at first, but I think they both gut her. And then Billy kills the principal. And in my mind, Stu killed Tatum, but if Billy killed Tatum, you know, whatever. Because I think that Stu killed Tatum and then went and killed her while everyone was distracted. When Billy shows up and talks, well, they don't talk, but Billy shows up and he gives Stu like a questioning look, and Stu's like, mm-hmm. And to me, that I read that as Stu confirming Tatum's whole idea. I think the whole idea to have this be set as a slasher and go by that formula is genius, and that's like Billy and Stu coming up with that idea is the reason this franchise exists, and I love it. Well, I would say it's the reason this movie exists. I'd say Mickey doing what he did is the reason this franchise exists, but we'll get to that later. And believe me, that does come into play with his placement, that he's like the idea man behind most of this. But I don't know. The whole idea that he was just gonna roll over on Stu definitely takes away some aspects, because like if you say you watch the original and you don't take 3 as canon, I'd say that they are actually friends, even if Billy has an unhealthy definition of what that means. With 3 canon, which it is, to where I read Billy's relationship with Stu differently, where it's very one-sided. Or kills, or more interesting motives or lack thereof, I tend to prefer the killers that don't have a clear-cut reason why they became a serial killer, and they only really reveal why they did this killing spree. I prefer those over the ones that are doing this for like a well thought out what they want, or like counterpoint their argument long enough to throw them off guard and fight back maybe. But when you're dealing with a Charlie, Stu, Mickey, Beth, you're gonna not have much to go with. There's not much to argue against. They're just doing this for fun, or for love, or lust. So you can't argue with it. It's creepier. Less is more sometimes. And I think that one of the geniuses of Scream, besides all of the other geniuses of Scream, is that they have both types of main slasher icons. They have the kind that have a clear-cut psychology and motive, and the kind that's just creepy and vague. The kind that's clearly is demented. And the kind that, like, blends in perfectly. It's just... It's good writing, and I think it's masterful that they have both types in the movies. Pretty much each movie, except the newer one. Or not the newer one, but... Well, yeah, the newer one seems to have 2 of the kind that don't really have that Billy, Mrs. Loomis, Roman thing where they're actually thinking of why they're doing it. Both of the killers in the new movie fit the other type, where they were clearly psychotic and had murder in them before whatever set them on this path. But I would say, other than that, in the shows and the third movie, each movie has both types. And now we're in our top 6.